Hello, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connections. Each of us has stories that help us to understand and to explain our world. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who have had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who have had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories that help us to better understand our world. And they help us to connect with each other. And Community Connections is about those people and about their stories. And I'm sure that you will enjoy meeting these amazing, amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hogue, and I'm delighted to have two guests today who are the most knowledgeable people regarding the impact of the BNSF Railway through South Surrey and White Rock. They have both worked hard to become well-informed and to inform our community of the railway, its impact, and the options as we move forward. So welcome, Greg Harrold and Eric Seiz. Thank you for being here with Community Connections. Eric, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in this community and the impact you're having?
Great, thanks, Gordy. So I moved to Crescent Beach, I guess about 12 years ago. I'd known of Crescent Beach much longer, prior to that, but moved out here about 12 years ago, and from Toronto, where I had, a tech background. And for me, I guess, the whole ocean foreshore and the recreational opportunities and lifestyle and all that was the draw, right, for coming out here. And then seeing the tract of land between Crescent Beach and White Rock, to me, was just this unbelievable paradise that was south facing and, perfect for kayaking and all the things that I like to do. And so it just helped, just inspired me to think, well, what could happen if there was a trail between us and them? And the thought really wasn't to do with moving the railway or anything to do with the railway at all. Just, I thought maybe in tandem with, so beside the track that, people who live in the area would be able to take advantage recreationally of that space. So, and not just people people that live in Crescent Beach and White Rock, but basically all of Surrey. So for example, we see with COVID, thousands of people from all over Surrey piling down to both those beaches. If there was more space for them, this would seem to be a good thing. And it didn't seem to me that a railway was necessarily the best use of space, but if we could work together, that'd be great. So that's where, for me, it started, was to explore what kind of connectivity options might be possible. And then at that point in time, too, there was just the old wooden trestle between the Crescent Beach Marina and the Delta Dike. And if that could somehow be connected with a pedestrian or and bike path, perhaps, again, in tandem, which do exist in some locations, it would cut out an enormous amount of commute time between the communities if someone wanted to, say, green commute. But also it would connect South Surrey, White Rock with Delta, and then all the way through to Ladner, and ultimately, once they ever figure out the bridge tunnel thing, all the way through to Vancouver. So it was kind of that vision that drew me to, the whole railway thing. I can't say that I came out here thinking about trains or railways or wanting to know nearly as much as I ended up learning about them, but it was really just unlocking the foreshore that brought me in.
Thank you. Craig.
I'll just start by saying I've done community work all my life, and the man that got me going was a former Liberal Senator, Ron Gitter. You may have met him. He was my tennis coach, and he insisted on us starting a nonprofit society, which we did. And I learned so much from him. I've done community work all my life. My three careers, luckily I've had three careers, lend themselves well to this rail safety and relocation. So I lived on the Semiahmoo Peninsula for 19 years. I came there, I thought it was the best part of the lower mainland. And I've lived in 3 different places. I did community work in block watch and building tennis facilities. And then I started to hear all the chatter in 2012 about the problems related to the BNSF railway. So I put together an engineering concept drawing and went down to see the railway in Seattle unannounced. I made it in, and we had 2 wonderful meetings in 2013. And they were very excited about the idea of putting a rail line up Highway 99 and having a tunnel. So that's how I got involved. And here we are.
Here we are. So what are the most important things that you think the community needs to know? Perhaps a number of new people in our community who aren't aware of the issues and actions that you've taken, and so many others have. And what are the directions that we might take now to firstly raise awareness, and secondly, what are the actions that might reasonably be taken at this point? You want to start there, Eric?
Sure. I guess in the time that I've spent with this, which kind of flipped from, you know, a trail perspective to more of a rail safety and transportation efficiency perspective, it seems that one of the biggest problems is that you continue to start from scratch every time when there's a new government forming. So it's kind of like the great, you know, that say Elon Musk would speak of, you know, where civilizations just can't get any further because they keep running into the same obstacles, right? And I think that's what we see with rail safety in general, and for that matter, not just, that's not a Crescent Beach thing or a White Rock thing. That's a rail issue, period. So I think they're completely applied to, say, Lac Megantic and any other area where there's issues, where you don't have an iterative improvement in the system, because no one wants for that to happen. And it doesn't seem to be in anyone's vested interest, certainly not the railways, or it would even appear, you know, Transport Canada's, quite frankly, to really establish something that allows for that pattern. So I guess that's the big challenge, is, you know, from a safety perspective, is to set in place some kind of organization. And that's where Craig has done great work, you know, by building a website. And so you have something that's able to live beyond the generation of just a single politician or a single advocate, you know, that the vision can grow, and that the statistics and the information, you know, for the business case, or, you know, just general historical context for the initiative, you know, have a place to be parked, right? So that, I think, is one of the big differences, and one of the challenges that any major project, you know, has, I think.
So Craig, you can talk a little bit about your website and some of the work you've done, some of your drawings, and highlight again the meetings you've had with BNSF and the awareness that you've been working so hard to bring to this community.
Mm-hmm. Our website will outline the large safety issues that the community faces, such as undesired emergencies, recurring soil slides on the West Bank, rising ocean levels, and mechanical and human errors. Any or all of those could cause a derailment. And if we have a derailment with chlorine gas, for instance, or other toxic substances, the number of people that are going to be killed will be worse than Lac Megantic. Trust me on that one. The second part that we're investigating is the economics, and there's lots on the website about that. Time is money for the railway, which I didn't understand at first when I saw them. I couldn't understand why they were so excited about all of this, but the new route that seems to be favored by all the politicians now on the peninsula will save 30 minutes of time. And time is money, and we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars when you start adding it up over 15 years, which will be the economic analysis that will get done. And the second part on economics is there's a lot of competition between the ports, and Port Metro needs to be competitive. That means we need to get this rail line changed so we can give Port Metro a one-up over Seattle and Tacoma. Anything else you want me to add?
Well, I think you should tell them your website, and people can look at your website to get more information as well.
Okay, there's the website.
I think you better read that as well.
Okay, railrelocation.ca.
So,
Pretty simple.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Say, Gordon, can I add a point?
Certainly.
I just thought, like when Craig was speaking there, it should be pointed out to anybody who, I mean, for me, one of the big revelations was how little information any of the politicians, including Transport Canada, have about what moves on the track. So, for example, something really basic like how many trains run per day between, on the BNSF Bay corridor. Nobody could answer that. And it's not just, the scary part isn't just that they couldn't answer that and they would need to say, refer to someone within Transport Canada or research some document. It's that information fundamentally does not exist. It is not recorded by Transport Canada. That information, if Prime Minister Trudeau wanted that information, he would not be able to get it. It would require probably legal action to BNSF, who would need to provide the information to him, and there'd have to be a good reason for that information to be provided. So something as simple as number of trains running, nobody knows about. Never mind what's on those trains, never mind historical context. So for example, how many trains ran 10 years ago versus how many trains ran 5 years ago or this year? So you don't have, like you would in advertising or in any other, continuous improvement environment, you have no statistics to generate business cases or safety cases or danger cases or opportunity or anything. Like basically, we're running blind. And for me, that was shocking, because somehow you think that there's this overriding intelligent form that's looking out for you. And then you come to the realization that when you pull back the curtain, there isn't even a wizard. There's nobody there, right? And so that's certainly been a bit of a shift for me in terms of focus.
And I think the role you played, and you had more information living right next to the railway and the monitoring you were doing than Transport Canada seemed to have at one point in time. And then I think you were
no, not at one point in time, period. The only reason they know how many trains travel is because we tell them. The only reason they know that there's hundreds of pedestrians walking on the track is because we tell them. They have none of the statistics, and they have no way of gathering it, and they seem to have no interest in solving that problem. I mean, basically getting in with the modern society, right? Like and not to be too harsh on them per se. I mean, I realize there's reasons for that, but at some point you have to kind of get with it, so to speak, right? And hopefully our actions will highlight that, and we'll make them start to re-examine what they keep track of and what they do. I mean, and it's not just them. It's like many government agencies, I think, have a lot to learn from the private sector, and so hopefully as we move forward, we'll start to see a bit more cooperation and opportunities that way. Like, I think this is a evolution of governance, a model that's happening. This is just an example.
May I add, Gordy, Eric and his associates have done unbelievable good work on what he's talking about, and he certainly educated me, changed my mind on a number of things. And Eric, I really thank you and your associates for doing that. That's been good work.
Yeah, in an age where
I'm gonna have to ask them in order to get all the information.
but certainly in an age where information is becoming so much easier to access, and we've got so many more ways to communicate it, we still seem to be operating in the 1950s in terms of what's happening in the railway here. Now, Eric, there was also, you were telling me about a setup in terms of being able to monitor what's happening with they put a point out, I think it was at Point Roberts or somewhere, that they could connect with respect to the Transport Canada saying, here's how we can tell whether there's been a derailment or a stopping in the area. That, and secondly, that my understanding is that now, hopefully now, that the fire department in both in Surrey and White Rock are notified with respect to what's coming through. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, so what happened there was after, I guess, several years, 5+ years of logging statistics of decoupling incidences in Crescent Beach. And, several years of us telling us, people telling us that it's not a problem. Anyway, what the issue turned out to be is that there was a communication failure between the front of the train and the rear of the train. And so when that happens, your braking system, which relies on this very delicate balance between the two halves, gets out of sync and the train can split in half quite violently. And that's called a undesirable braking event. The train locks up and you have the thing frozen across the tracks. In our case, that means all access in and out of Crescent Beach, stops. So what BNSF did eventually do was put a tower up in Point Roberts so that there could be line of sight communication between the front and back. And so at least for a certain subset of the problems that were taking place, that hopefully will solve those. So I guess maybe that would be a positive outcome from our advocacy.
It just we seem to be dealing with a number of the safety issues, which are obviously paramount at this point in time. But Craig, you point out that economically there's a great advantage to relocating the railway, and it seems that people balk at what they're seeing as the cost in the short term without looking at a 20-year or a long-term process for basically dealing with the economics of it. And there's a good economic argument if it's done over a 20 or 25-year plan or even longer to be able to look at and pay for that process. Is that a fair interpretation in terms of your knowledge and experience that you've been dealing with, Craig?
Yes, one of the big questions has always been, this is going to be too expensive. However, I would cite a very good example from the past. In 2010, 11 entities approved the Roberts Bank Corridor Crossing projects, which were the 7 overpasses in Langley and Surrey that have all been built over top of the railway. And the capital cost at the time was $182 million, which would be about $220 million in today's dollars. Well, we're talking 350 to 400 million for our project. And if the people back there in 2010, the 11 entities, including 4 railways, could all get together and cooperate and collaborate and come to consensus, we can do it also. We really, truly can. And that's what Eric and I have been working with lately to get everybody to cooperate. And I believe we got them to that point now. I truly do. We can talk about that later if you like. And on our website, we do have estimates of the capital costs and who would pay what? Federal government, province of BC, Port Metro Vancouver, the railway, and they'll pay lots, and municipalities totaling 400 million. We took the top figure. So it's all on the website. We stuck our neck out and made estimates because nobody else wanted to do it. So we did it.
Do you want to talk about those estimates? And it seems that we've been able to make little incremental changes with respect to the issue of safety. And people seem to be able to grasp that in the here and now. But when we're taking at a longer range approach to it, people seem to be backing off and reluctant to do that. But I think that the work you've done, now there's a really good financial argument, which you would think that the BNSF, with the amount of savings they would generate with a half-hour savings in terms of getting to the port, that would make a big difference. And you would think that they would want to participate in the funding of that. And I think we need to get to some serious negotiations about that. And the other thing I think, which is very frustrating to the people of our community, is, as Eric points out, the increase in the number of trains, but the fact that we're taking dirty coal out of Montana and out of the States, and which is contrary to everything we believe in terms of environmental issues. The American ports won't take it in Washington or Oregon. And so now they're dumping their dirty coal through British Columbia and through Canada, which just seemed, as a principle or as a value, just seems so incredibly wrong. And maybe you can talk about those three variables in terms of the environment, the economics, the dirty coal, and all of those things. And those things, I think, packaged together, make a pretty strong argument for the things we're talking about in terms of a longer term addressing this issue. Clearly, we need to take safety in the short term, but we need to also be looking at a long-term change.
So quickly on the economics, it's very hard to get economic statistics from railways. That's one of the biggest and hardest parts of this whole exercise. Fortunately, we have a good transportation consultant, Mary Jane Bennett, involved in all of our efforts, and she was part of this from 2013 and has stayed part of this whole project along the way and contributed a lot of her free time to help us to move ahead. She has provided some ideas. I've done a certain amount of research, and you have to put together rather high-level figures and start making estimates in different ways. And I did estimates in 3 or 4 different ways in order to come up with figures that matched a lot of the capital cost estimates that have been put forward in the past, between $300 and $400 million. And also to figure out what kind of savings the railway would get if we were able to achieve the relocation. And they will have to pay major dollars under the Railway Crossing and Relocation Act if we go that way. So all of this is achievable, and we've done all the initial estimates. It's all on our website. Secondly, on the environmental part, we certainly agree that the transportation of coal, I agree with your comments, and it's causing a lot of concern in the community. It has for years. Definitely an environmental concern. If there was a tragedy on our railway from whatever cause, that in itself would be an environmental tragedy. And on our website, we also talk about rising ocean levels and how that might be affecting the rail beds and the degradation of rail beds. We've talked about it on the website. What was the third part you wanted me to mention?
Let me see. It was the safety issue, which I think you've touched on as well.
Oh yeah, I think I've touched on that pretty well.
Yeah.
Gordy, I'd like to add, if I could, one organization that hasn't been mentioned, which I think is paramount, is the port. So Port Metro Vancouver is an incredibly important part of the Canadian economy. And I think when you're looking at something like this, you can't really necessarily look at what the current flow is. You have to kind of throw a dart in the wall, you know, pretty far down the way. And so do you want the Port Metro Van to be the largest, or you know, one of the largest, most competitive ports on the coast? That's the entire coast, not the Canadian coast. But you know, you've got Seattle to compete with, you've got LA to compete with, and they are incredibly efficient, and they're competing really well with them. So in actual fact, there exists an opportunity for them to run away with it all, to actually grow and take market share. And so if they were, I guess, a bit more, or someone federally was a bit more bold to make this the higher priority, I mean, when you consider the Canadian dollar and the efficiency of the port, there's a chance there, I mean, more than just a chance. I mean, water flows downhill. You could take over huge amounts of container traffic, you know, from those other ports, where it's incredibly inefficient, not just because of the workers, but because of traffic issues in and out of those locations, right? And where they're located in North America. So I think if someone were to take a bit of a larger view, then you go, okay, what's the primary route into this place? Oh, it's this windy little single track that goes along the bay. Like, it would make no sense. You'd go, well, look, how are we going to, you know, increase the efficiency so that we can handle this larger, more profitable federal organization? And the answer then would be, to build I would think would be to do a relocation, or at least to consider it, right? So, I mean, and that's at the end of the day, the business case will drive the result, so you can sit around all day whether it's something safe or not, or whether, what the current traffic is. But what you have to really do is think, where do I want to be and what do I need in place to let me get there? And I don't think that level of thinking has happened yet, that kind of fundamental thought pattern.
Yeah, I think we clearly get stuck in the here and now without having the ability to visualize some of the information you're providing that give a bigger concept and a bolder and more correct long-term concept, which we seem to just be incrementally responding to these little safety issues rather than more actively addressing
yeah, because that's the real business case. Like, that's the business case that needs to make sense, right? So, I mean, because you can drive yourself nuts over the current business case, but you got to actually look at where you want to be, right? Where's the puck going to be, kind of a thing, right? Like, never mind where it is.
Yeah, so the focuses tend to be, or the foci tend to be around the issues of safety rather than looking at the environment and looking at the financial and putting those all together in a single package. And,
correct.
And people have a visceral response to it as well. So I think while we're talking about all of the rational and cognitive and intellectual approaches information-wise, there's a visceral response to it as well. And I think it's the dirty coal that attracts that visceral connectedness. And we've got so many ships sitting offshore in the Gulf Islands waiting to come in and take dirty coal away. There are a whole bunch of bigger picture issues that are influencing not just our waterfront and not just this area, but the Gulf Islands and many other areas as well. And I think we need to be able to be more active in responding to that in a collective way.
Those are good points. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Craig.
Those are good points. I hadn't thought of those things. That's excellent. Yeah, good thought. Yeah.
So I think that we were getting close to the end of our time. So maybe you could each sort of summarize what you would see as the shorter and longer term strategies for looking at this, and how we might put together a collective package as a community around being able to respond to the broader based issues. So it's not just focused in our community, but it's focused around some principles and values about dirty coal, principles and values about safety, and the very important work you've done, Craig, around the financial impact. And it seems to me if we wanted to project 25 or 30 years into the future, it will pay for itself in a reasoned way. So being able to put that rationale. Can you each talk a little bit about that and any kind of final comments you'd like to leave for our listeners, and who may be looking at this 100 years from now and saying, look how insightful those two guys were putting together the changes that we're seeing now. Craig, do you want to start there?
Oh, okay. Well, there's many things that will have to be done fairly soon in terms of engineering studies and economic analyses and transportation and urban plans. All of those will get done when we move into the next phase. I would just say that from our July meeting with all the politicians on the peninsula, we had every politician, including Semiahmoo First Nation. We had federal, provincial, we had mayor and alderman from Surrey, mayor and alderman from White Rock, and Semiahmoo First Nation. Everybody is in favor of moving ahead on this. There was consensus on that. So Eric and I right now are working with the city of Surrey to take a look at how we might move this ahead. It really is about how. We know a lot of the things that have to be done, but we need a governance structure that will carry on into the future to satisfy what Eric has been talking about. We need a governance structure that will move into the future that will allow the contributing political figures to contribute to that governance structure and move ahead, so that if we have a change in a politician at whatever level of government, this still moves ahead. It doesn't die.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Eric?
Sounds good to me.
Eric, do you have any final comments as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of realistic expectations, I think a success case is in the US, and a lot of times it will require, say, a powerful senator with a vision.
Right.
And I don't know if we actually have the equivalent of that in Canada. And I think if you don't, you end up with a lot of little patchworky things, right? And a lot of things being done the same as they've always been done, because there's no really large plan in place. I mean, if you drive around Surrey, you kind of, or the Lower Mainland, really, you see it on our roads. And I think BC, it's one of the strengths of British Columbia, having moved out here from Ontario. But one of the weaknesses is the localization, where, you know, you need to have, for some things, a bit of a bigger picture. And unless you have a structure in place that allows for that, you're really just going to keep bumping into that threshold. You know, you're never going to get past the filter. So I think, I don't know what the answer is. You know, like I kind of throw it out there to, it almost requires a government or governance restructuring of some kind. That's, you know, that's my thought. Like, in terms of, if you really want success, you have to have some kind of longer term, bigger architecture. And I don't know if we have that in Canada. We might need to think about somehow doing that.
And I think as a principle, we continually look at incrementalism in terms of responding to the immediacy, rather than having a vision for the future that is a bigger picture vision that's grounded in the values, rather than just grounded in how are we going to make this a little safer today, and
Yeah.
seem to put that off. So I think I certainly concur that if we're going to be planning, it is a big picture vision, it's a longer term vision, and it's not just about responding to the issues of today, but wanting to say, what do we want to leave for the future? What should it look like 20 years from now or 50 years from now? And unless we have that type of longer term vision, and have a disruptive process of affecting how we're doing things today, then we wouldn't have made many changes across our country in the past or in our communities if we didn't have some of that.
Yeah,
So,
no, you wouldn't have a Stanley Park.
that's right. And we wouldn't have a railway across Canada, and we wouldn't be talking about creating our future. So
Could I just add one last thing?
certainly.
Let us all visualize riding on the first train through the tunnel of Highway 99. You, Gordy, Eric, and me, and a couple other politicians are going to be up front on the lead locomotive. Think of that one. We are going to make this happen. It's just going to take a while.
You bet. Well, thank you very much to both of you for all the work you've done on behalf of all of us who care about this community so dearly. And you obviously care about it and have taken a really tangible and positive approach to trying to make a difference. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.